Hi everyone, welcome to my craft corner. I'm Heidi with Onigo Stamping. I'm so excited that you're joining me today. I have a great set of cards to share with you using the All Things Fabulous stamp set. This is exactly what its name says. All Things Fabulous is a beautiful set filled with gorgeous flowers and some awesome sentiments. While it looks a little bit daunting because it has lots of stamps and it's a 3-step stamp set, it's actually great for beginners too, and I'm going to show you a beginner card that you can use that's very simple, all the way up to a much more advanced card. This set is perfect for everyone. I also have some tips and tricks for using the Stamparatus and doing embossing, both regular heat embossing and embossing with Stampin Up classic stamp pads or dye ink. So lots of things to share with you today. Before I get started, if you have any questions about stamping or you need help getting started, need help ordering product, you're interested in hosting a Stampin' Up event, or maybe you'd like to find out about the awesome deal that Stampin' Up is offering on the starter kit for the month of September, I'd love to help you. Just leave a comment below or send me an email and I will see what I can do to help you out with any of those things. If you like this video, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends, and come back and see me again. All right, Onigo, let's get stamping. All three of my cards today use the All Things Fabulous stamp set. I feel like this stamp set is the epitome of a stamp set that works for the basic stamper, for just the beginner, just started stamping person, all the way up through your most advanced stamper who is doing all sorts of amazing things. It just has so much to offer in it. However, I also think it can be a little bit daunting for those beginning stampers. You look at it and it has a ton of stamps. And it is a 3-step stamp set, which means that a lot of the images have 3 stamps to create one image. However, what's really great about this stamp set is you don't need to use all 3 of those stamps. You can just stick with the basic stamp, just the basic image, and use that without using the other layers. So it's great for beginners and it's awesome for advanced stampers as well. The other really great thing is I'm going to take this out, and I've already taken off a lot of the stamps and put them on blocks to get ready for today. And this is really, really hard to see. I don't know that you'll be able to see it, but what's really awesome is that all of the stamps are labeled. So they tell you so like this one is 1A, and this is 1B, and this is 1C, and they tell you which way is up. So it kind of helps you know which stamps go together and which direction they face to try to line them up. And I'm going to talk more about lining up the stamps and how to do that a little bit later in this video. But we are going to start with the easiest of cards. So I'm going to set this aside. All 3 cards today use the same basic design, I guess. The same cutting dimensions. So they all have a piece of Whisper White cardstock that is 3.5 inches by 4 3/4 inches. They have a piece of basic black cardstock that is 11/16 by 4 15/16. So it's 3/16 inch bigger in both directions from the Whisper White cardstock. And then they have a piece of colored cardstock that is 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. So just a really basic card design, and we're just going to stamp them up a little bit differently. So I'm going to take that piece of Whisper White cardstock to start with, and I have pulled out the image. I have the flower, just kind of the side image of the flower. I like that one the best. And I have the leaves. There's kind of 3 leaves, so I have the 3 leaves. I also have, this is the one that we will do 2-step. It's like this little tiny burst of flowers. So I have the 2 stamps for that, and then I have the greeting. The greeting says, "Nobody gets me like you do." So I have those all ready to go. And I'm going to use Melon Mambo, Granny Apple Green, and Daffodil Delight for this card. So I'm going to start with the Melon Mambo, and I'm going to stamp my flowers up at the top. And I'm just stamping 2 flowers at the top and then 2 more flowers, or at least 1 and a partial flower at the bottom. Just like that. Now I have the Granny Apple Green ink pad, and I'm going to stamp some leaves. And I'm just going to fill in around some of these flowers. And it can overlap a little bit. Doesn't have to. It's kind of just whatever works. So just filling in around those flowers real quickly. Trying to figure out where I want to go, and I'm going to grab another one just to kind of come in here a little bit more. Add a few more flowers. Not flowers, but a few more leaves. And those can overlap too. They look kind of cool when they overlap just a little bit. And this isn't real precise, just kind of adding wherever I think it's going to work. Now I have the bottom of that little burst of flowers. I'm going to go ahead and stamp that just in a couple places, kind of at the outskirts of my flowers. They're kind of like the sprays on the edges of your bouquets, right? Like if you have a long bouquet, you kind of have some flowers that stick out on the edges. That's kind of what these are. So I just stamped one on either side. And then I'm going to use the Daffodil Delight. And there's these flowers. Now, they do line up perfectly, but I will tell you, I only get them lined up perfectly maybe 50% of the time. It really doesn't matter. You kind of look over top, you can see through there, and you can see where the bottom of those stems are. But if it's not perfect, you're not going to notice. So just turning my cardstock so I can get to it a little bit better. It's always a good idea. It's a lot easier to turn your cardstock than to turn your hand. So let's see, I'm not sure. There we go. So there is the stamping. I'm just going to set that aside. I have a little piece of cardstock, and this is 2 3/8 by 1 inch, and I will have all of these dimensions available for you over on my website. The link is in the description to this video, so you can find all that information there. And I'm just using the greeting that I picked out, Nobody Gets Me Like You Do. I'm stamping this with the Melon Mambo again. Very quick and easy. And now it's just a matter of assembling the whole card. So my Stampin' Seal, I'm just going to hold it pretty straight up and just kind of not push too hard and roll it on there. And then this is getting attached to a piece of basic black cardstock that's just a 1/4 inch bigger on both sides. I'm going to attach my stamped flowers to that piece of basic black cardstock that I was talking about earlier. That is 1/16 inch bigger in both directions. I love the look of that skinny mat on there. And I maybe should have done that with the grading too, but it'll work. Then I'm taking my piece of Melon Mambo. I'm going to fold that in half. And I'll use my bone folder to get a nice crisp fold. My stamped image goes on that Melon Mambo. Right in the center. See, I just love the way that skinny border looks with the thicker border. It's really one of my favorites. So 3.5 by 4 3/4 for the white, and then 3/16 inch bigger in both directions for the basic black. And of course, I have to use Stampin' Dimensionals because I always use Stampin' Dimensionals. Just putting those on the back of my greeting. We'll stick one more right in the middle just to make sure that it doesn't get smushed down by the Postal Service. Peel off those backs. Hope they make it in my trash can. And then I'm just going to adhere my greeting right to the front. Try to get it centered from side to side. Don't always. So I really like that, but I wanted just a little bit of bling. So I pulled out the iridescent pearls. These are in the August to December mini catalog, and they're supposed to be for Halloween, but I really like the look of them. They just kind of shine, kind of a pink and blue and green, just real metallic looking. I really want to find some sort of grungy, steampunk type of stamp or something to use these on, because I think they would be perfect. But I think they work really well on this card too. So I'm just going to pull those out. And I'm going to add 3 of these. I almost always add 3 or 5 of any little bling like this. So today I'm just adding 3 of them. And I try to get them in a triangle. So 1 on top, 1 on the bottom, and then I'm going to put, oops, let's see, I'm going to put my 3rd one. Maybe, yeah. Kind of got to play with it a little bit, see where you want it. If you don't push them down too much, you kind of just set it there, you can still wiggle them a little bit. So, and then when I get done, just give them a good push so they're stuck on, and there we go. Really quick, easy card, and just using 1 layer of those 3-step stamps. So that is card number 1. Let me go ahead and clean up and push this out of the way, and then we will start card number 2. For my 2nd and 3rd card, I'm using the Stamparatus to stamp my flowers. I want to start by getting this set up. You'll see I have the foam mat underneath here, and I'm just putting one of these pieces of mini grid paper on top. I'm going to pull out the magnets. Be careful with the magnets. They are super strong, and you'll see when I pull out the other one that I have already broken them. Yep, I've used this, you know, half a dozen times, and I've already broken the magnets. So be very careful with those. They are strong, and if they snap together, they will likely break. What I have done, sorry, I should tell you what I'm doing right now. What I've done is I've already die cut the three flowers that I'm going to be using for these cards out of a piece of scrap Whisper White paper. This is something I had stamped on and it hadn't turned out very well. So I cut those out of there, and I am just going to tape this down to my grid paper. I'm going to be taping everything down because I found that this, it likes to shift a little bit even with the magnets. And you have to be very careful that it doesn't shift, because with these 3-step stamps, if it shifts, it's not going to line up when you stamp it the next time. So I want to make sure that everything just kind of stays right in place. I'm also going to tape down that grid paper right to my Stamparatus, so it is not going anywhere. And even though that is all taped down, I'm still putting my magnets on top. So here's my 2nd magnet that is broken, and those just store right underneath. So I have all that on there. Now I'm going to put in 1 plate, and that just slides in the side. Remember, you have to hold it straight up for it to go in, and then when it goes off to either side, it's kind of stuck there. I'm using this because I have all of the pieces pre-cut from Whisper White cardstock, and I'm going to stamp them after I cut them. I know usually you stamp things and then you cut it with the dies, but this time I actually cut them out first and then I'm going to stamp them. I did this because it's just a little bit easier. You don't have to worry about your die shifting when you run it through the Stamparatus. You can do a whole lot of different ones very quickly this way. You know they're all going to line up in the same place on your piece of paper. So it works out pretty well. Before I put those in there, I'm going to take the stamps, and I am just lining this up, trying to get this in the center of that hole so that it will be just in exactly the right spot when I go to stamp it. And I need to grab the other 2 flowers. So I have that side one that I used on the first card. And then I have a smaller flower. Okay, line that one up. It's a little bit difficult. I wish that I had cut these from a colored cardstock so I could see the edges a little better, but just trying to get it in the center. And then this front on one, that's a full flower. So they kind of stick to your fingers. They like to wiggle and move. We'll see how we did. So I'm going to pick that up with my stamping plate. And this is where, when the stamps don't have ink on them, they really, really like to stick to the paper. That one didn't even come up. Let's try again. So when they don't have ink on them, they really, really like to stick to the paper. And that's why everything is taped down. But it still shifts. So I try to get everything back in the corner. For this card, I'm going to start with some Mango Melody. And when I'm doing these 3-step stamping, I've found that I really like just to use the same color in all 3 steps. You can use different colors, but I really find that it looks really, really nice when you just use the same color in all 3. Which I think is what I did here. Let's see. I may have, you know what? I may have used Daffodil Delight. Let me check this out. Because Daffodil Delight and Mango Melody also look really nice together. All right. It shifted a little bit again, but pretty good. And my Mango Melody, I am going to switch to Daffodil Delight to do this. My Mango Melody is having a hard time getting it re-inked so that it's nice. I have found, here's a tip. If you have our ink pads, make sure you do not let them get too dry before you re-ink. If they are too dry, when you go to re-ink them, it takes a long time to get the ink redistributed well. And there's some different tricks you can try to do to help with that. And I've been working with my pad, but really you want to make sure it's much better to add ink a little bit at a time instead of trying to really re-ink a pad that's gotten too dry. So I'm going to switch to Daffodil Delight. I'm happy with the placement. So I'm going to just place those die cut flowers right in those holes where they fit. And now I will ink this up with Daffodil Delight. And I will stamp the first image, the base image. Hopefully get that really good. They stick to the paper. So I'm going to stick them back in the holes. That one looks like it missed a little bit, but it will be okay. You want to be careful when you're doing this. If you decide after you've stamped it the first time that you're not happy with the placement and you want to move that, that's fine, but it means that you won't be able to use that flower for the subsequent ones because the placement of the second and the third stamp will be off. All right, so I'm going to grab the 1B stamp. What I have found with lining up these stamps is that you want to look at the open areas, the cutout areas. That's the part that you are going to line up. The bottom of these cutout areas is what will hopefully match. Now I'm probably getting my head in the way because you really have to lean over these to see where they're going to line up. And this is why I love having the Stamparatus for this, because you can get it a little bit more perfect than when you're trying to use just a stamp set. All right. So again, I'm looking at these holes in the center and I'm going to try to line that up. Line up the bottoms with the holes here. Go. And then this third flower, the smallest one, I find is the hardest. The holes are quite small. They just don't line up very well. They're hard to see. I miss on this one more often than not, but that's okay. It's all good. So I'm trying to figure out which direction it goes. This is why it's really nice. All right, so here is my pattern, and I just bumped that other one off center, but that's okay. All right, so I'm just trying to line up this third one. I've bumped it a little bit off center, but that's okay. I'm gonna try to line up where it goes. There we go, and line that up. Come back to my first one and get that back on top of its little spot. I'm just giving those one more peek to see, oh, see this one? A lot of times I will come in and I will pick them up each individually to try to get them just right. But the Stamparatus is really great for this. So I'm going to put in this second plate, and I'm going to come and pick up these 3 stamps. And now we will ink up that plate again, and we'll see how I did on lining up the stamps. Hopefully pretty good. We'll see though. Set those in there. I'm just going to use the Daffodil Delight again, and I will ink up those 3 stamps. Push that down, and then we'll see how he did. They stuck. Oh, not too bad. So I'm going to set these aside because we're going to come back in and do the 3rd stamp, but I want to do a couple more first. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a fresh one. And this is why it's really, the other reason it's really nice to use the Stamparatus is because you get it all lined up and you can do multiples a lot easier. I'm not going to do that one though. So inking this up with the Daffodil Delight again, stamping the first stamp first, putting those back in. They definitely like stick. Ooh, that one did not stamp well. Well, again, with the Stamparatus, the nice thing is I can come back in and redo this one. Just give it a little bit more pressure. And there, we got a much better impression on it. Now I'll ink up the top, the second ones. Ink these up and stamp them. And we'll set these aside too. Now, in addition to the Daffodil Delight flowers, I also want to make some Flirty Flamingo flowers. So, I had to remember what color I was using. Sorry about that. So I'm just going to wipe off my stamps. Very quickly, I just have a wet rag here that I'm just wiping all that ink off. I'm going to put in, once again, I'm going to fill up and put in these pieces that I have. I'm going to grab my Flirty Flamingo ink pad and ink up my stamps. So there's the Flirty Flamingo. And then I will stamp the inside with the Flirty Flamingo again. So there's stamp number 2. I need another Flirty Flamingo of this side flower. So we'll go ahead and re-ink this again. And do the second stamp again too. This is what is so nice about the Stamparatus, is it just makes it so quick and easy to stamp multiples of these. We'll we'll set those aside. I remembered that I needed actually some more of the small flowers in the Daffodil Delight. So I'm gonna go back and stamp a couple of those before we switch to do the third part of the flower. So again, just wiping the ink off with a wet rag. I'm trying to get the ink off the plates too, because you do end up getting some ink on the stamping plates, and it's always good just to get that off. So we'll put the little flower in its little spot. Ink this up with Daffodil Delight ink, just like I did the first time. Do the second. That nice and good. So there's one, and then I'm going to do one more. All right, now it's time to come in with the third color. So I've put away the largest of the stamped flowers, the flower stamps, and I'm just returning my already stamped images to those holes. And now I'm gonna go ahead and line up the third stamp. So remember, this is a 3-cent stamping, which means there's 3 stamps to make these floral images. That really gives it a lot of shading and depth. I'm just gonna try to line these up as best I can. I will say this third one is a little bit tricky to line up, and honestly it looks good with just 2. So if you wanted to stop at 2, you definitely could. I'm gonna go ahead and try to get the third stamp on here. So I have the 3 stamps on here. I'm just gonna close my Stamparatus and pick up the stamps off of the images. And now I think that I will come back this third time, and I'm going to use the Mango Melody at this point to really get a darker color on the inside. So I'm just going to ink up those 3 stamps. And then close my little window, and we'll see how well I got everything lined up. So there we go. That could have been a little bit better. I'm just gonna go with it though. It's kind of a little bit low, but I'm just gonna say it's okay. We're gonna stop there. Add these. Ink. And now I just have 2 more small flowers to add the centers to. And then we will switch over to the Flirty Flamingo again. So it really gives it a really nice look with that, with all of those different colors in there. The layering of the color, it just gives it some real good texture, some shading to it. All right. Now we're going to switch to Flirty Flamingo, so I'll go ahead and load up my spots with my Flirty Flamingo ones. We're going to clean the stamps. And load up the third spot with the Flirty Flamingo. And I'm just doing these with the same color for all 3 layers. I think it still gives you some real nice depth, some nice shading, even though you're using the same color on top of each other. It's just kind of a much more subtle look. So there's my Flirty Flamingo flowers. All right, I'm all done stamping these flowers. We're gonna go ahead and put away the Stamparatus. Actually, I'm not gonna put away the Stamparatus. I'm gonna clean off the Stamparatus because we're gonna use it again when I'm actually putting together the third card. I'm gonna set aside my Flirty Flamingo flowers and most of the little yellow flowers. I'm just using this larger Daffodil Delight and Mango Melody flowers. What I had really wanted to show you today was embossing and how easy it is to do embossing, and kind of got sidetracked on a whole bunch of other things. All right, I want to show you some very basic embossing. So I have a small piece of basic black cardstock. And I'm going to go over this with my Embossing Buddy anti-static powder. It's basically just a powder in here that helps keep the stray bits of embossing powder from sticking. I have my Versamark ink pad. My sentiment is already on my block, so I'm just going to ink that up with the Versamark. And I'm going to stamp this right, hopefully, in the center and straight. Then I have some white embossing powder. I'm going to grab a scrap piece of paper, the white embossing powder, and I'm just going to dump this right on. Don't worry, we're not going to throw that all away. So I'm just dumping on that white embossing powder, and I'm going to tap off any extra, give it kind of a flick. See if I can get it to stick a little bit. So this ink is a sticky ink. It's not glue. It's not going to stick permanently. I can't just leave this embossing powder like that. It won't stick forever. I have to heat it in order for it to melt and then really stick to the paper. So the ink is not a glue. It's just a very sticky ink. You can see I have some little bits of embossing powder. Try to get those off. All right. Then I'm going to heat this with my heat gun and melt the embossing powder. So if you can see that, it's just become very bright white and shiny, and that means it's all melted and ready to go. So I'm going to grab that Whisper White just like the other card. This is 3.5 by 4 3/4. To make this card, I'm going to eventually have these flowers glued right here. But I want to go ahead and add some greenery behind these before I glue them down. So I'm going to grab the same stamps I used before, grab my Granny Apple Green, push these out of the side, and I'm just going to stamp some greenery behind here. Doesn't have to be perfect. A lot of it's going to get covered up, and that's okay. This is just to give it a little bit of a backdrop. Just like the other card, I'm going to add some of those sprays of flowers in. Get those in there. Let's see. Do one more up here. Never really sure exactly where this is all going to end up. We'll leave it like that. I don't want to get too many flowers, too many leaves on there. This time, instead of yellow flowers, since the larger flowers are yellow, I'm going to make the little flowers Mango Melody. So come in and stamp those over top. Again, if they do not line up perfectly, you will not know. It's kind of one of those things, when they do line up perfectly, you're like, oh yeah. When they don't, you're like, yeah, good enough. It doesn't looks right. You don't notice until it's exactly perfect what it's supposed to be. So it really doesn't matter. So there are those little sprigs of flowers. I'm going to use my stamp and seal to add these. I'm going to do the big flower in the center and then the 2 other flowers to the side. And then I want to add this black to the top. And I was supposed to put this on the black base first. I forgot. It's okay. Make the base line up with the greeting. So there's the greeting. Put this on the black base. That seal is so simple and quick to use. Just takes a little bit of work to get the hang of it. First time you use it, it's probably, you know, you're gonna have it has a little bit of a learning curve to it, but once you get it, so quick and easy to use. So just adding that, and I'm gonna put this on a piece of Mango Melody cardstock. A good fold. And just in the center, just again. And for this, I'm just going to add some rhinestone basic jewels. I just felt like it needed a little bit of something, and this is what I went with. So just add 3 of these, just like last time. And we'll do one right down here. There we go. Love where that is. We're just going to move it over a little bit. There we go. All right. So that is card number 2. For card number 3, I'm going to start by showing you how to emboss with Stampin' Up! Classic ink pads. These are just die ink pads, and I want to show you how to emboss with it. So I have a piece of Whisper White cardstock that I've cut with the stitched rectangle dies. And with a piece of washi tape, I'm going to tape this down to my grid paper. And I'm going to choose where I want to put it just so that if it pops up, I know where it goes. Just sticking that down, and then I'm going to take my stamped greeting, and I'm going to lay that on that piece of Whisper White cardstock where I want it. I'm putting it a little towards the top, not directly in the center. And then I'll pick that up with my stamp plate and push that down. And I'm going to stamp this with Flirty Flamingo ink. Before I do that, I'm going to run my embossing buddy over the top real quick. Then we'll stamp with the Flirty Flamingo. So I'm just inking this up with the Flirty Flamingo. And stamping it. Now, I'll wash off the Flirty Flamingo ink. Get all of that off there. Oh no, it came up. That's exactly what you don't want to happen. Hopefully it's in the right. So normally you want this to stay stuck and not scrub it so hard when you're washing it. We'll see if it works. I'm going to take my Versamark ink pad again, and I'm going to ink this with the Versamark ink. Then I'll close this on top, and hopefully that will be right over the same spot. Now, take that off the back, set my Stamparatus aside, and I have some clear embossing powder. Now, we used to sell these giant tubs of clear embossing powder. We only have the small ones now, but that's okay. You can do it just like I did the other side. And this giant tub really lasts forever. I'm not sure anybody really needs this much embossing powder. So I just put the clear embossing powder on there. And just like the white, I will melt this with my heat gun. So it's a little bit hard to see, but now that is pink and shiny And you could do this with any of our classic Stampin' Pads that you want. Just gives it a nice embossed look. So really quick and easy how to do embossing with dye inks. All right, let's put this card together. This card is the fanciest card. It has the most steps to it. So I want to show you, I cut out, this is with the dies. That same die set has this really fun lace pattern. The little chads, I guess, stick in there. So what I do is I take my take your pick tool, if I can speak. Take your pick tool and I just poke those out. And you can see I did most of them already. There is an attachment to this tool that I really should get that's like a little brush, and you run it over the top and it pushes out all these things, but I don't have it. So I just poke it with the take your pick tool, or you could do it with something else that's kind of sharp and pointy. And then I rub my finger across the back to grab all of those little hanging chads. See what I can get out of there. And I don't need to take out all of these because a lot of this is going to get covered with our sentiment. So I'm just doing the bits on the edges. So that should be enough. And that's that really pretty lace. Sweep away my bits of paper. Just like the other two cards, I have a piece of Whisper white cardstock that is 3.5 by 4 3/4. And I'm going to use my Stamparatus for this again. So let me grab my Stamparatus. What is really great about the Stamparatus is that you can use it to, oops, do not pick those up in the same hand. They will grab each other. That's how I broke them. Don't pick them up in the same hand. Don't do it. So you can use this to place pieces as you're working on kind of a whole stamped area. So put down my piece of paper, and I have the flowers that I stamped before, and I'm gonna start to lay this out how I kind of want it on here. And it may not be exact. It will probably change a little bit, but this is just to give me an idea and help me place the leaves that I'm gonna stamp. So I'm just laying the different pieces on here. Lay on my greeting. And you'll see this kind of start to come together. Put that there. We'll add another yellow flower over here. And maybe another yellow flower down here. All right. So just kind of filling in where I want that. Now, those same leaf stamps, what I can do is I can layer these. I'll just add these where I think they're gonna look good. Unfortunately, I can only do 3 at a time, but that's okay. So I'm just gonna lay those down where I think I need those 3. And then I'll pick them up and I will take off all of my stuff and then ink up those 3 leaves. So this takes a little bit of time, but it was really helpful to kind of get things where you think, where you want it, know how you want it to look. So stamp those 3 leaves. And then we're gonna do this again because I want a little bit more than 3 leaves. So I'll go ahead and clean off my 3 leaves so they are not dirty. And I'm gonna wipe these with a dry cloth as well. So just get the extra water off. I'll wipe them with a dry cloth. And I'm going to lay out, ooh, and I got some pink on there. Well, we'll try to cover that up. Lay out my stamps again. these pieces that I've already made. So these are all going to go on top later, but I want to stamp the leaves that I want underneath. And they're not going to be perfect. They're going to change a little bit, but it just gives me an idea of about where I might want the leaves to placed. So once again, I'm going to grab some of the leaves and I'm going to lay them down where I think I want them. So pick those up, take off all my pieces again, ink up my stamps, and stamp those leaves in where I want them. Take out my piece of paper. I'm going to set my Stamparatus aside. I am going to add some of those sprays again. I just love them. But those I'm not going to use the Stamparatus for. I'm just going to add those because now I know where the leaves are going. So I can kind of just add these in to the right spots. Kind of around the leaves generally works. And again, I'm just, rotating the paper because it's easier to get to like that. Let's add one more over here. This time, I'm going to make the flowers Gorgeous Grapes. I'm grabbing my Gorgeous Grape ink, and I will add those clusters of flower, whatever they are. If anybody knows what these are supposed to be, I would love to know. I'm not really sure. Are they buds? Are they some other type of flower? I'm not really sure, but they look nice. They add just a little bit extra color. So, all right. Now I can start layering this on. And for this, I'm going to use liquid glue. To start with that black piece of lacy bit. And I'm just going to add glue. I can add glue in the center where I didn't poke out any of those little chads. I can also put it in the middle of each of these kind of centers here where it's a little bit wider. Don't have to worry too much about getting it all the way on the edges. It's fine. I'm going to try to cover up where I got some ink on my piece of paper though. So, and I might have just put this a little too high. Let's pull it down just a little bit. All right, so put that on there. Then I'm going to add this flower up in the corner. All right, so I have the base of my flowers on there. I want to add the greeting using dimensionals. Add that in over top of some of these flowers. Oops, that one was not stuck down very well. I wanted to go for a ride. All right. I'm going to put down my last flower, also using a dimensional, at least some dimensionals on the bottom there. And then we're going to add in some more leaves. So you can see I put dimensionals on the bottom, and then I used a little bit of liquid adhesive on the top where I know it's going to stick to the greeting that already has dimensionals on it. So I didn't want a dimensional up there. Now I have some pre-cut little, I don't know, little leaves here. I kind of cut those out. And I'm going to add these in place after the fact. I just find it's easier to figure out where to put them once everything else is glued down. So you really make sure you have them exactly where you want. There are dimensionals under there, so I'm kind of, working my way around the dimensionals. So I'm just laying those in there where I want the leaves to be. Let me see, do I have, yep, I have just a couple more here too. All right, because I feel like I want one down here as well. And if it doesn't quite fit, you may have to cut it. So once I have those all kind of where I want them, now is the tricky bit, is I actually am going to come in with some mini dimensionals, and I'm going to slide the mini dimensionals kind of right up underneath and stick them down that way. This takes some serious effort. Ooh, I want to cover up, oh, my kitten came to visit. I want to cover up that ink spot. So I'm just kind of picking that up just a little bit, putting a dimensional on, and then sliding it back in place. And I'm not worrying that the whole thing is not stuck down. I'm just sticking down little bits. So that just gives it lots of dimension to it. Just like the other cards, I will adhere this to a piece of basic black. And then I will put it on a piece of Flirty Flamingo. And I will add a few of those rhinestone basic jewels to this too, just to give it a little bit of bling. I was going to put some silver ribbon on here and I forgot, so. It's just a few, just like that. There you go. A not so quick and easy card, but really fun card with lots of dimension, lots of color and brightness, and just layers of those flowers. Really pretty. So all three cards, going from easy to slightly less easy to a lot more little pieces. Thanks everyone for joining me today. Weren't those 3 awesome cards? I really hope that you love the All Things Fabulous stamp set as much as I do. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I will make sure to answer those for you. All of the cutting dimensions for today's cards can be found on my website, as well as additional photos of the samples. And the link to my website is found in the description to this video. There's also a link to a complete supply list for all 3 cards, and it's very, very easy to shop from that supply list. Again, you have questions, just contact me. I'm here to help you. Thank you again for joining me. If you like this video, make sure that you like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and come back for more Stampin' fun, tips, and techniques. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.